Welcome everybody to another special night. Let me begin by saying that we would like to acknowledge the land on which the University at Buffalo operates, which is the territory of the Seneca Nation, a member of the Haudenosaunee Six Nations Confederacy. This territory is covered by the Discretions Treaty of Peace and Friendship, a pledge to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. It is also covered by the 1794 Treaty of Canandaigua between the United States government and the Six Nations Confederacy, which further affirmed Haudenosaunee land rights and sovereignty in the state of New York. Today, this region is still the home to the Haudenosaunee people, and we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and share ideas in this territory. Tonight, we're very lucky to have Tali Hingis of the interdisciplinary art duo LoVid here with us. She is part of the current exhibition Electric Op at the Buffalo AKG Museum, so please go see that if you haven't already. Tali will be introduced by Tina Rivers-Ryan this evening, who is also our guest, and who curated the exhibition. Tina was a curator at the AKG from 2017 to 2024 and is currently editor-in-chief at Art Forum. So please join me in welcoming Tina.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tina Rivers-Ryan. As you just heard, I'm a curator of an exhibition on view in Buffalo right now, featuring the work of LoVid, which is why I'm up here. But I also want to call out that this is not my first time on the stage. I also had the honor of teaching here at UB back in the day. And it's nice to actually see some former students of mine in the crowd here. So I am here to just briefly introduce Tali from LoVid, who is somebody that I've known now for a few years. So just so that you'll see this work later on in Tali's presentation, but LoVid's work is on view in an exhibition called Electric Op at the AKG Art Museum. Has anybody, by show of hands, and it's okay if you haven't, but has anybody seen the show yet called Electric Op? Okay, a number of you. Oh, great, well done, well done. For the rest of you who haven't, I just want to call out that Electric Op is on view until January 27th. Okay, January 27th. So maybe before, if you are leaving town for the holidays, otherwise when you get back, if you get back in time. And the museum is Pay What You Wish admission on the first Friday of the month. So Electric Op is an exhibition that looks at the relationship between geometric abstract art and the history of video and digital art. And you'll see throughout Tali's presentation why LoVid was such an obvious candidate for inclusion in this major survey that looks at something like 100 artworks by 90 artists, something like that. So Electric Op is really about placing the work of artists who engage video and digital technologies today into a larger art history, a larger story about abstraction, about the history of abstract art in the 20th century. And about understanding why it is that abstraction, and specifically a kind of geometric abstraction, has been so interesting to artists who work with video and digital technology. Now, the show in Buffalo here is mostly featuring digital art, but there is a lot of video art too, and I just want to call out, for those of you who are not familiar, this region, Western New York, and specifically this city, Buffalo, and even more specifically this university, and even most specifically this building, has a really important role in the long history of artists working with video. Back in the 1970s, when the Department of Media Study was founded, there were a lot of really influential, iconic video artists who helped develop video as an artistic tool, as an artistic medium, who actually operated here in Buffalo. And Buffalo is known internationally for its role in helping promote video art, and specifically a kind of way of working with video that is very playful and very hands-on, and is really about sort of twiddling knobs and getting up in it with synthesizers and finding ways to sort of fiddle, right, and experiment and play. Which I think is really important, and you'll definitely see that in LoVid's practice. I can't even remember when I first got to know LoVid's work. It's just sort of always been around ambiently. It was definitely during the COVID years when many of us in the art world spent our time, and a lot of you might have been like, trying to figure out how to do school, but those of us in the art world were trying to stay connected, and so we spent a lot of time in Clubhouse. Was anybody in here on Clubhouse? I don't know, in Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces and these kinds of things, connecting with each other over the internet, and so we got to know each other a lot better then. And it's been a real pleasure to work with LoVid on the presentation of this work in this show. So I hope you guys go check it out. Formally, I will say, proper introduction, LoVid is a New York-based interdisciplinary artist duo working collaboratively since 2001. I also want to call out Kyle Lapidus, who's the other half of LoVid, who's not here tonight, but is also a key part of LoVid and its history. LoVid's practice focuses on aspects of contemporary society where technology seeps into human culture and perception. Throughout their interdisciplinary projects over 2 decades, LoVid has maintained their signature visual and sonic aesthetic of color, pattern, and texture density with disruption and noise. LoVid's work captures an intermixed world layered with virtual and physical materials and simulations, connection and isolation. And there's more that I can say. I will call out that they have worked with a number of the sort of leading organizations that present moving image art, media art, this kind of funky synthesizer work, including the Museum of the Moving Image in New York, Wave Hill, Art Blocks, Postmasters, Bitforms Gallery, Fraser Gallery, et cetera, as well as the major contemporary art spaces like MoMA PS1, and the Jewish Museum and the Kitchen, et cetera. I just also want to call out for those of you who are interested in how artists who work with experimental technology or who make funky things or who make performances can actually manage to make a living. LoVid is a great example, and I'm sure you have evolving thoughts about how this all works, but LoVid is a great example of how artists don't always have to, make discrete luxury commodities, but actually can find a way to sustain their creative practice in alternative economies, doing different kinds of things. So a real role model and inspiration for anyone in the room who's looking to be an artist, but doesn't necessarily know or have any interest in like making a painting or something like that. So without further ado, can everyone please welcome Tali up onto the stage.
Hello, hi, good to be here. Thank you for having me. I had a great time meeting with some of the students. Becky, keep me on the schedule, keep me on the time. I usually walk around, but I'm confined to this podium, so you have to send me your engaged energies and eye contact, Thank you, exactly. I need constant feedback. And usually I like to have a conversation, but I will go through the slides. I don't know if you if you have a question, you can raise your hand, and we'll do it at the end, right?
We usually do it at the end.
We usually do it at the end, but if it's a burning, feeling, don't hold back. And I'm actually really excited because I'm testing this new way of talk, a new artist talk. I've given so many of them, and just truthfully, the more I've done of these, the more work I do, it's harder and harder to contain what an interdisciplinary practice is in, a 40, 45 minutes, hour talk. So I'm going to start by kind of just setting up this terminology about interdisciplinary work. So in our case, we sort of do all these things, and you can group them into subcategories or isolate them into different different occasions. And often interdisciplinary practice means that each project or each artworks combine multiple things. You can combine video with textile, with sculpture, with installation, or it means, in our case also, that we might do different things at different times. And there's just kind of a random example of the various things. Instead of talking about everything, I'm going to talk about just a few things. Another kind of term and a theme in our work is this abstraction and figurative work. And again, I'm just putting out these terms, and so you can kind of see this repetition, hopefully, and I'll talk more about process later on. But a process is, so just kind of going, on the left in abstraction, you have on the top generative code-based work, you have analog video recording, you have a digital collage work, and a painting. And then the figuration, you have video, a participatory performance that ended up with a QR piece, a video, and a tapestry work. So I'm just kind of giving you a little mini visual tour, and keep those two things in mind, the abstraction and the figurative, and maybe just the questions of how do they collide and do separate things, or do we see them possibly as just kind of flowing in and out in our work. And then process, which is a real key, super important thing for LoVid for us. Just a quick just explainer that I might switch between me and us often. It's because, as Tina mentioned, LoVid is myself, Tali, and Kyle, my husband partner for 20 years, but we also often work with other people, and so I kind of almost blur the boundaries between when is it one person, when we're multiple. So sorry if this is confusing, just kind of like embrace it. And so, here we are, it's in the bottom. Okay, playing analog. So analog synthesizers, just, Tina gave a little bit of a kind of introduction to the history, especially in Buffalo and Western New York. There's such a rich culture of what analog is. We build our own analog synthesizers. We work with other analog synthesizers as well. Digital, which can mean code base on the top, but also working with Arduinos and other processes and kind of taking on other more digital practices. And then materials, and these are just some examples. We do work with some stained glass and a lot of textile work. Okay, so now we'll kind of start on a little bit more of a chronological order. And this piece in VideoWare in 2003 was really our first collaborative artwork. Before that, we were doing performances and VideoWare. So wait a second, I need to do a time travel for young people. So in 2003, there were no iPhones or smartphones. There was no mobile video, so there was no iPads. There were barely any laptops. I don't know. So video was not something you took in your pocket. And we started as a performance duo. We did video and sound. And at the time in the aughts, there was this really exciting boom in our group of young artists on doing blurring music and performance and video and costumes. It was like a kind of an underground scene that we were part of. So we wanted to play live audio and video, but we really wanted it to be more performative. So it was a reaction actually at the time to the beginning of laptop music, laptop VJ culture, people behind computers. And we wanted to disrupt that. So we were working with, on the table there, you'll see, we actually had we find old 80s, 90s analog video mixers that, I don't know if anyone's seen it, kind of VJs, when there were tapes before there were computers. And then we got LCD screens. At the time, you could only find them for cars. If you've ever seen like a car and like a back seat and an LCD screen in it. So we got these screens, we hacked them, we modified them so we could run live video from these monitors. And this is, 2003 was our first solo show, and we played live video on it. And in addition to it, I'll show you the next slide, we covered them with textile. So the textile at the time was, what do you call that? Like an iron-on, you guys have seen that. So we took video stills from that. I'll go through that in a minute. Made kind of fabric by ironing it, and then modified these protective sportswear. And so, when we performed with it, we had hundreds of feet of cable. So this was really, we were playing with the idea of at the time where everything was becoming wireless, and technology was developing, so it's like a black box where electronics was, smaller and smaller chips, and you couldn't see the connections. We wanted to really expose the process, and we would call it wire full. So there were hundreds of feet of cable. The cables are running electric signal, video signal, not audio, actually audio is running separately. And so this is really our first video sculpture for sculptural work, our first textile work, and really our first performance work, playing with it. And we toured with it, with these things, and it would take us hours to set up and wear them, and often they would break on the road, and we traveled with a soldering iron to fix it. And so DIY culture, which hopefully you kind of are familiar with, that term was really an important part also. So it's meaning ownership, making your own tool, making your own instruments, this relationship between the abstract patterns, again, that I was talking about before, in the textile and the human body. And so this is actually a series of photos that we staged photographs to capture that. So these photos are from 2004. On a kind of like another but interesting topic, and Tina was mentioning the sustainability of an artist practice, which is really important to me as I'm speaking to the next generation. So this show was at a gallery called Science Gallery in New York, which was sort of like a little bit of an artist-run space. It was our first solo show, and we had the video where we had a series of photographs, which you can see behind us. They were like video stills printed as C-prints, and we also had a wall of drawing. And we had, a nice, I think we had a review in a newspaper, but at that time, we didn't sell any drawings. We sold a couple of the photographs, and the videoware got a lot of attention. And so as an artist, you do what you want to do, but you also are very sensitive to what works. And there was a big demand, it sort of tapped a hidden nerve, this kind of future, we used the term retrofuturistic. And at the time, we knew that this image in a kind of pre-internet, pre-Web 2 at least, it was kind of early days of internet. It was sort of like went a little viral. And we had friends who worked at ad agencies and would tell us the people were hanging these photographs at these various offices. So, we kind of, this is where our career developed for a long time in this trajectory of the handmade instrument and live performances. And so a quick pause to say after that in 2005, we started developing our own analog synthesizers. And this is where I'm going to say, I put it on the left side, was resources. And analog synthesizer has long history. I will say Ben Sandine was like someone from, a pioneer artist from the 60s. ETC, Electronic Arts Intermix, this is all very regional to this area. So ETC was at Owego, New York. There's a photo of that studio. And this was a moment in the 60s, 70s, this was the idea of the studio of the future. It was the first time you could take a video from a camera and process it. And so, add colors, add textures, whatever it is that you are all doing now, either in After Effects with AI outputs or on your phones. You had to have a whole room with these equipment. Now in 2005 when we built it, in 2003 when we first did the residency, it was already 20, 30 years after that. So we were really not intending to do something that was the cutting edge of technology. We were really reclaiming what we thought was a lost art and a lost craft. And so again, instead of using, in addition to using the contemporary technology of MoMA, which is at the time was early kind of, not early, but maybe, what do you call it, nonlinear editing or kind of other software, Max MSP was a big thing. We were using that, but really kind of having this full autonomy and ownership of our own instrument was really important. And so in 2005, we got a residency from IBEAM and funding from New York State to develop our instrument, Synharmonica. And now I will show you a little bit of clips, a few clips. And I might not show the whole thing, but let's see. And actually, you might have to remind me how to silence this thing. We rehearsed it, and now. I'm going to have to exit it. Sorry about that. Practice it, and now. So I'm just going to play a little bit of this. So this is a video from 2011 that we recorded at Experimental TV Center in combination with our own instrument that you saw on the left called Syncharmonica. So this is all the video is recorded live with this analog synthesizer, and it's digitally edited. So we kind of go to a session and we record for several days, almost nonstop, and then in post-production we edit the segments. And another thing to note is that with the analog synthesizer system that we use, the sound and the image are one signal. So it sort of happens simultaneously. It's not one, the sound and image are kind of recorded at the same time. So we're not separating them at this point. I'll just play a little bit, maybe I'll scroll through it. So Tina was mentioning the electric op, and this piece is not at the show, but when you go to the show, you'll see a lot of work that sort of resembles it. And so in that moment, there is the idea of performing, of making an audiovisual composition that really exists in the moment and is composed with these analog synthesizers. It's also about signal disruption. This is kind of, you're thinking about glitch, a term that some of you are aware of. This is not an effect. So this where the signal kind of degrades. It really is intentional. It's a part of the work. That's what we're embracing, basically. So let's see what happens at the end. And it is kind of important actually to mention that a lot of the community that we were started working in is we worked with the visual art world, the video media art world, and also the music world, and we performed in a lot of, actually last time we were in Buffalo for the opening, it was for a squeaky wheel for a noise show in 2002. So context is really important. Where you make work will be perceived one way or another. So we used to play this kind of stuff, in small venue, people's homes, and places like Squeaky Wheel, and like big projections, very loud system, and that was kind of that era. And now I will switch to another video, a recent video, where, oops, that's not it. This is it. Okay. So this is a video from a couple of years ago, and again, I'll start with no sound. And it's very different, and actually, it's different, but actually there's a lot of similarities. In this piece from 2022, it's called 3 Moons, and actually we're using a homemade camera. So I think you saw in the beginning there was this kind of wood box, and we worked with a longtime collaborator, Douglas Repetto, programmed, what do you call it, a Raspberry Pi camera that works in a way where it kind of it doesn't have a viewfinder, and when we walk out with it, it basically kind of collages in real time one frame next to another. So it creates these very long panoramas and really interesting overlays. And so for a few years, we were working with that pretty extensively, making these kind of landscape photos. And what you see in the background now, so this is the figuration and the abstraction working together. So these are photos, recordings with this camera alongside recordings with our synthesizer. So the abstraction of the landscape and the body, this signal disruption becomes one thing. And then here we work with a musician, Greg Kelly, for the soundtrack. And actually, this is what we were doing in the early lockdown days. We were really spending a lot of time outdoors. A lot of time, we live in Long Island, New York. A lot of time with our neighbors, kind of traveling and filming people with this camera. And walking around with a camera with no viewfinder became this like almost a meditative practice. We did a couple of films with it. The other one is much longer and much noisier. And it was commissioned by Issue Project Room, which you can still see online. So, you know, different examples for time-based work in different ways, working with our own homemade instruments. And you know, in the age of, I started with showing the VideoWare with, there were no even video screens. Now we all have cameras. Everybody has access to endless amount of equipment, to all the cameras in the world, all the software in the world. And the question of how you, everyone has so much and everyone has the same equipment. Where do we all stand out? How do we evolve a unique voice where not just the technology, but the structures of distribution, which is like, you know, social media, the internet, seem to have a kind of a flattening effect. No, I can go back to that with. No, I didn't do that. That's okay. Okay, here we go. So these are some questions. So hardware, video, resolution, and obsessive aesthetic. I heard that Regina was here last time. It was the same class. She talked to you a lot about that. Don't worry, I'm not gonna repeat it, but it's all fresh in your minds. But the one thing that is, so on the way on the left is our installation at the current VA. It's a piece called 46 Shorts. It's from 2006, recording from 2005. Now, the one thing about analog video, which we've worked with all these years, is that it has a video resolution of 720 by 480 pixels, or sometimes even 640 by 480 pixels. And those of you who know video and or digital art at all, this is it's a very small, low resolution image. And so, and that's, you know, that was kind of in the era, that was high tech. Whatever is high tech will become obsolete. And, you know, just kind of honestly, as a young artist, we wanted to work in media and, you know, new, old media, avant-garde, experimental media. And we didn't realize how fast technology was going to develop. And we didn't realize that when you work with technology as your art practice, you constantly have to kind of make a statement for or against, I don't know if it's even progress, but kind of evolution of technology itself. It's a slippery space to work in. And so what I mean by that is that when we first built our instruments, they would just work on a TV. We could just plug it into a TV and play it. When we had the first video I showed you, we could just like show it in a TV. The TV itself was not an important part of the work. It was the video, it was the process, it was the instrument. It wasn't the display, it wasn't the frame, it wasn't the display. The display was never supposed to be a visible part of it. But as time went on, we realized that to present work in its original format, we had to adapt to making the TVs a part of the work, because the work is small. If you show it on a flat screen, you have to make a decision. Do you show it small with like a big black box around it, like a letterbox, or do you expand it and kind of have this pixelation going on? Both are fine. It's a decision you have to make. So what we decided to do kind of in around 2015 is, as we were doing more and more installations of recorded work, was really to go full into this idea of this obsolescent technology and embrace the objects of the TVs themselves. There's a long tradition of that, and you know, artists from the tape, for example. So that it's nothing new, but it is a really interesting thing as we move on, and it's very visible in the installation at the museum, is that every generation, every few years is a new design. And so design, industrial design, decisions that are made by corporations, by, often for the home, for leisure, often for efficiency, are not something that within the control of the artist themselves, who just wants to make, who just want to make art. So again, we started embracing it, and also thinking of, the sustainability aspect, and what does it mean to have e-waste, and where does that go? A lot of interesting, Julia Christensen's work, if anyone's familiar with studying, Julia's work has done a lot of really interesting research on where e-waste. So these are some examples. So what we've done is every time we exhibit some of these works, this is on the left is Boots No Shoots 2013, we'll be rendering in 2016, and 46 Shorts 2006, now 2024. And so the work exists as digital files. In the case of 46 Shorts, actually running off a DVD from that era, but it can also just be displayed as a video. And so there are video files that are displayed on a kind of endless amount of TVs and media players from any kind of era that the institution, the gallery, the curator can collect. So on the left side was a solo show at Macmillan. We had 49 TVs, DVD players, media players, projectors, and just kind of stacked them up in this very presentational way. And in a way that, in the museum you can see there's a lot of TVs that are, in kind of white boxes where it's hidden. It's all about making the object, the technological object, transparent. And there's also some works in the museum where the object that the image is displayed on is a sculptural part of it. So here we're really going towards leaning into the sculpture aspect of the TVs, the cables, this wireful aspect that I was talking in the beginning. The second piece is Ruby Rendering. It's a 5-channel piece that has been displayed in lots of different places in iteration from 5 TVs monitors to up to 40 plus. This was a commercial gallery for Klaus von Nichtssagend in Manhattan, and then 46 Shorts, which is, it's originally, that piece is made actually by physically hacking a graphics card of a computer. And this is maybe the 3rd or 4th time iteration of it. And the assignment for Tina and the staff of the museum was to assemble e-waste. Broken, a lot of it is, non-functional. It's a kind of a beautiful archaeology of the design. And actually, talking a little bit more to the show, with this piece has not been on display for at least 10 or 15 years. And seeing it within the context of the exhibition in ubART, I really realized that the objects themselves act as an abstraction also. So you see them as this relics of different technological era, but also very formally they have their own presence, especially alongside some of the most incredible work in abstraction and geometry that Tina has in the show. Okay, how am I doing on time? I'm doing great. Okay, cool. Because I'm going to skip now, and I know also that the reason I kind of wanted to go around different things, because I know we have in the room here students with lots of interests and backgrounds, and so I do want to talk about some of the other things. And so this is a piece called Reader Taxidermy / Young Antiquities, which was a kind of a transformational work for us, and it's the moment where we probably first started exhibiting work that was digital as a term, media-based. I don't know how to call it. It's the words changed on me because I never used to call it digital, but it is digital in nature because it does use a computer. So digital born, let's say, but without monitors necessarily on view at an exhibition. So I'll talk a little bit about that process and how we got from here to what we're doing these days. So on the left here at the bottom, you have a still actually from Ruby Rendering, which is the installation that I showed you earlier. Now, the way this is made by pure analog synthesizers that we've recorded. So, this is the kind of abstraction, pattern, repetition, the color composition. It's very kind of significant, kind of iconic to synthesizers we use. Now, you've seen that we've used textile in our 2003 piece videoware. Textile has always been a part of the work, and in fact, analog signal has this kind of textile pattern similarities. It sort of feels to me always like textile design. So in this case, on the top you have a little clip of Ruby rendering. On the bottom you have a still, which actually we've printed also. I've exhibited it as a print. But what we did after that is we printed that as textile and made a physical, just oddly shaped stuffy out of it. And then we actually got funding again from both Wave Farm, I think it was like a regrant, a NISCO regrant from a digital Wave Farm, and possibly something else I'm here for now. And then we took the plushie and scanned it with a 3D scanner. And we actually did a whole series of these sculptural pieces that when we used various levels of scanners, and the kind of that like mapping thing is, the output that the scanner gives you when you scan it. So we used kind of phone-based scanners. Now they're much more sophisticated, but we also had access through Stony Brook University to a paleontology lab and got some really high-end scanners to do this. And then we published online a website where on the bottom right all the way is a GIF, an animated GIF of that 3D scan. And then we did a second public web project where we also published a 3D printable object, which is that kind of white thing. And then at the end of it, you see the middle one is sort of transformed the original sculptures to incorporating its own 3D printed version. And so actually that project was inspired by, we went to Denmark and for a show, and there was a Fab Lab bus that traveled around Denmark, and you can go, and it was around that time, a couple years earlier, and it was the 3D printing experience. And you can kind of, and then I found that Smithsonian had this free library where they scan all these artifacts, and you can print a relic from some vase or some sword and kind of print it on the bus in Denmark, and had this tiny little kind of low res, looks nothing like the original thing. But that experience was really interesting, and not only that, like experience of translation, but the process of degradation, and that fits a lot with what I was talking about before, resolution, translation, and so the whole project, and also the distribution, the idea of distribution. So we actually published and did a couple of shows where it was kind of crowdsourced, and people can print these kind of like abstract, almost kind of I don't know, grotesque or ridiculous objects sometimes into these completely low resolution small objects, and people would print them in local libraries or in their university, and it was really kind of like, 3D printing was going on for a while then, but it was not as common as it is now, and it was a really interesting work, and exhibiting these pieces without, as I said, a monitor next to them. So this is another example of a small textile piece, and we showed it in a couple of art fairs, and actually we had, I think one of the places it was shown was also in Canada. There was a lot of exhibitions at the time of textile and technology, and Laura Splan that has a woven tapestry in the museum. We were in some good shows with her work, because it was this kind of really thinking, we're still doing it, but there was this kind of early days of everything could be outputted in interesting ways, and this merging of traditional crafts with the current technology, and what translating the media, digital, virtual world into physical spaces look like. So this was kind of a really interesting moment for us, and really what it did, again, I talked at the beginning of following opportunities in 2003. So at this moment in time, this was 2016, suddenly we were getting opportunities from galleries and institutions that were not just media. There were a lot of textile, and we did a lot of shows within the textile work, and have these works on display next to some incredible weavers and other textile artists. And so context is really, it's really an interesting thing. It brings in a new audience, new perspectives, and I just, especially if you are an interdisciplinary artist, I really recommend testing your work in front of different audiences. So a couple of other examples kind of around that time. So this is, so the process today. So these are called dye sublimation, and so it's a heat-based transfer. We work on a digital file. All the colors and the compositions in it, all the colors, let's say, and the patterns always come from our analog synthesizers, same way. In this case, we take video stills and collage them digitally in Photoshop, creating one very big, large digital file that then we work with high-end, the best in the business, local to New York City or New Jersey, textile printers. Those are fabrics that are made originally for the garment industry. So they're extremely resilient, you can sew it, and so these works are tapestries, they're quilted works. There's actually a little element of painting in this one as well. More of that, some more details on it, so that's kind of cool to see. Again, and it's actually a photograph sewn onto it. And it's a real mixed media piece as well. And this is, Tina was mentioning Wave Hill, which is a place in kind of the Bronx, a beautiful place in artist residency galleries. And so because we were suddenly working in these more blended, blurring the boundaries of digital art and craft and making physical objects, we could also make proposals. Now, Wave Hill accepts also video artists. They don't have an exclusive, material-based residencies, but it does open the door for other things. And once we were able to have this expanded community, we could also lead a workshop on photography with that camera. I was showing where this photos was based on that camera. So it's interesting how I never understand why artists are so quartered into one discipline versus another, where actually there's a lot more similarities between the practices than we are given a chance to discuss. This is kind of probably some of the most recent work we've done. And this is actually the photo on the right is to give you some sense of scale of the photo. So this is again a tapestry piece, same process, digital collage. The colors are entirely made with our analog synthesizers. So at this point, we're going back into this piece is from 2022. We're going back to our archive because over the years of performing with our analog instruments, we have a lot of tapes. We recorded them originally on mini DV tapes, and then also as digital files, and then we can kind of access it as really our color palette. It's something that we call like a collage material, whatever metaphor you want to use for it. So there's this big digital collage, and the dye sublimation is printed. It's like one very big piece of fabric, and then there's, you can't see it in this photo, but there's a lot of hand sewing. So this is maybe, and this piece actually has some hands in it. So there's some figurative elements in it. Now I want to just remind you, take you back to our original synthesizers. I didn't go too much into it, but the synthesizers were made by hand. Kyle designed them, built them, soldered them together. All the chips were made by hand, and then we performed them together. We spent time. It's a very intimate process working with an analog synthesizer. This is not software that can write by itself. It cannot be replicated. So the times of residencies that we've done, the performances, those are once in a lifetime opportunities, and we really are very precious with these recordings. And so starting with that handmade instrument to the shared together intimate experience of working by hand with this instrument, now back to through the digital processes and back to sewing by hand. So all that whole trajectory is really important. And then this Hudson tape. Okay, I'm going to show first the stills here, and then I'll go to the video. Okay, another thing that we end up doing is that we simultaneously make work in multiple media. So we do video, and at the same time we're making these textile work. It's hard to sort of make them one at a time. That's true. So in 2021, early days of lockdown, everyone in isolation, we reached out, we sent a kind of a call to friends and family to send us a video. Let's see if this works for me. To send us videos of them hugging. Can we see it? No. I'll do this. Okay. I'm going to do a little mini installation. And okay. So then we animated it. And so we have a whole series of work called Hugs on Tape, which are primarily these collection of 18 animations. And so the process for making these is actually very similar to the textile work. It's just in video. So we take a recording, someone sends us a video of a hug, then we illustrate, we animate it, using Photoshop, Premiere type things. And then, but all the colors, the patterns that you're seeing that are filling the background and people's bodies, those are all analog signals, and that's very significant. Again, because of this aspect of being in the moment and in the present of with the analog signals, and we do see kind of in our world building or in our symbolism, the signals have this emotional connection between electricity, the human body, and they really are an extension of us and of humanity and the natural world. So they're emotional, they're abstract thinking, and they represent something that is really important for us. There's also, of course, again, this relationship to tapestry and to craft, and there's an incredible tradition that is so important to pay attention to within the textile arts and what they say and how throughout history the crafts and textile have been often considered less valuable than the fine arts, and the same goes to actually digital art and other art practices. And it's really important, I think, to that we can kind of change that perspective and actually not abstraction, pattern, the crafts, textile, technology, all those things are just as important culturally, economically, for humanity, for people, and they make a difference. I'll play one more. So these are, I said, there's a series of 18 of them. Each is a person, and they're also were important for us. Where is that? Where'd you go? They were also important for us then because they are an individual person, and to consider them as portraits. And because they're portraits, they are actually, these works are sold as unique work, which is kind of also interesting if you are if you know a little bit of history of photography, of video art. There's often this perception of it in multiples or in infinity. And so we really wanted to make a case for these as valuable as unique artworks. They are portraits. When you have and that was another kind of going back to this pivotal moment. It was a really important moment for us to go on this journey of making portraiture and what that means to make portraiture in video. And kind of going back to the economy, some of you might know about a little bit about NFTs. Love them or hate them, but this work was our first NFT works, and what that means is that we have collectors who have purchased them. Not all of them as NFTs. Some of them they bought them on files, just on a digital file with a certificate of authenticity. But those works, almost 17 of them, are now in collections of museums, of private collectors, and exist in this. Again, it's really important in the context of art history. And not just in multiple other ways where culture is distributed, which are also really valuable. 46 shorts, which I showed you in the beginning, that's in the gallery, in the museum, was actually released originally as a DVD work on an edition of, I can't remember what, 500, maybe no, 486 probably. And so there's lots of different ways of distributing work, and it's more about like knowing who the audience is and what context you want it to be. So this work was important for this particular context. Oopsies. So, and in addition to the videos of Hubs on Tape, we've also made large tapestry, and the same exact thing as we've seen before, but that really has become, so both the portraiture and textile has become a big part of the work. Now, how are we on time? And do we want to ask questions, or should I? This is sort of like a lot, and I don't know where we are on time, and we can do whatever. You want to talk about this? I will need a volunteer from the audience. Let's see if it's going to work. Okay. So this kind of brings us to our most current project, which is called Heart Sleeves. And it's a bit of like a combination of the whole journey and where we are now and where we're going next. And so we started developing the work in I don't know, 2 years ago, probably. And because of this limitation of, inspired by what NFT, Web3, all of that, I won't get into it, but like the possibilities of putting work on the internet in this new thing called Web3, and also inspired by some work with software, what software can do. And the limitations of the analog video, as I discussed earlier. We started this project which has multiple parts, and the first thing we wanted to do is we wanted to create a digital code-based work that would echo our personal visual vocabulary of video synthesizer. So we collaborated with Doug Strupetto, our friend I mentioned before, and created this like collection of these patterns. And maybe I'll kind of go through it first, and then we'll maybe go at the end to an interactive part. And so the first part of it is that we created this collection of patterns we call them skins. And then we designed with more collaborators, Tyler Henry, an interactive web-based browser that you can create. Anyone originally could create their own portrait, but now we're really using it as like a tool to create this collection of portraiture. Called the Heart Sleeve. So here's like an example, and I can show you like the animated of it soon. This is just like was currently a week ago was installed at a place called Issue Project Room in New York, where we had a performance. And so each of these people either created their own portrait or had a recording session with us. So we now have, we have probably about 50 or so portraits, and it's a growing project. And we're recording them. Some of them are on the blockchain. You can kind of see them online. Some of them, we've had either collectors or on our own kind of are building this library of portraits. And it's become this. It's sometimes when you make such an elaborate project, it really took us 2 years and a lot of resources. And the same as for Synchharmonica, which is our synthesizer, I always feel like you make this complicated project and the project makes you back as an artist. So releasing something that is so experimental, you don't always know how people are going to react to it. You don't always know what the work can become until you see it in the world. And that's kind of this incredible thing. It's the same for probably a painting. You don't know what the painting is. Earlier today we discussed it with one of the students until you leave your studio and it's out there without you babysitting it. You have to go home and kind of let it do its thing. And that is just the most terrifying and incredible part of being an artist, where the work is living in the world. And so these are just some examples. So actually currently in London we have this installation of the work on the left, where they're showing the same monitor and another portrait. And this is an example of, we had this issue project, if you ever heard of New York City, look it up. It's an incredible venue for experimental media and mostly music and sound work. And we had a kind of a mini residency. I'll show you in a minute some of the performance that we did there. And I can show you a little bit of the video. Okay, so there's no sound for it yet, it's so fresh. So, oh, no, crap, I forgot. Sorry about that. I have to click this thing. Okay, let's see. There's a million windows now that so maybe what I'll do, because I feel like we might be running short, I don't know. I can play this new video, and then if there are some questions, I can take some questions, and we can do a little participatory thing, or I can talk about, you know, some. Okay. And this one doesn't have a sound yet, so this is, and I can walk around. Okay. So this is basically we had this Kaberd, it's incredible, brilliant performer, composer, musician, artist. Was performing a sound with voice and flute. And we were running the software on their face in real time. And so these are like raw recordings of what the software can do. We can do a little mini presentation if you guys want, but I'm just kind of showing you the variability. So it is kind of designed to be a portrait immersion project. This is actually based on a piece that we did in 2009 called Hack Your Face, where we performed with our synthesizer and projected it on people's faces. And we wanted a way to recreate the sense of immersion that you have in a room with projection, but on a web-based, in a web environment. This was really also a response to our life on Zoom and our life in this like mediated world where we feel maybe isolated, but also a kind of a newfound sense of intimacy with people through these new devices. So maybe, do you want to do little questions now, or do we just skip to the other thing? We do a little. What do you feel? What's the vibe? What's the vibe?
We could do the participatory thing.
We want to do the participatory thing?
I thought it'd be fun.
Yes.
If we
So
have
I have a volunteer.
we just need one, right? Or
Yes. Oh, we might need to too.
we could take two.
And I would like come up with questions. Like this is the moment where you can
Start
like
thinking about
just like you
questions.
can just like like bring your board in if you have a burning thought, because it will take me a minute, or not a burning. What's the opposite? Very quiet thought. Come to the stage. No?
We could do them both at the same time.
Yes, we can do one after the other. Let's see. Oh, you guys don't have to be here. So this is it's a web-based, it's a webcam thing. And let's see what happens. It's also, like, let's see what happens. Yeah. Questions, comments, complaints.
Jump in with a question. Oh, it had already loaded up very fast.
Here we go. Okay, so I know it's more fun. It's like it's hard to like talk for everything. It's like you need tactile. You need tactile experiences. This is what this work is about. And so actually look at what's your name, my friend? Look at the camera. You can see yourself in it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what we call the portrait studio. So I will. This is kind of fun because it's fun and I can move. So the background, which I said we call skin, that is running live code as you're seeing it, meaning that is going on infinity. This part is not a recording. It's also, speaking of resolution, it is a called resolution agnostic. So you could blow it up real big and it will not lose resolution because it is creating the code in real time. And so, so this particular skin is a unique, what's called token, never mind the vocabulary, but it's a unique pattern. And so this pattern is sort of like we recorded, we have it kind of as a recording, some of it, I think this one is probably minted, and it cannot be repeated because of the way you design the algorithm. The patterns, now, okay, let's see, what do you do? Okay, great. Now, you want to move your head from side to side okay, great. Now, if you open your mouth wide, okay, great. Now, if you kind of blink your eyes, yeah, you can just, okay. So we built in, there's like some machine learning in it, which means that it's recognizing the human face. So you can kind of tap it a little bit and add the things to it, but it will activate once it recognizes it as a person. And then, and we can have the next person. You want to come turn? Yes, go ahead. Now, what's your name?
James.
James. I'm going to have you also, so you see on the bottom, there's these toggles and kind of controls. Where it says camera, the store. Okay. So it's kind of designed also on kind of like old school, like beach. Like in the beginning, I was telling you about the analog mixers we used to. So you can control the output on that. And so it's supposed to be this playful, immersive, virtual space that anyone can interact with, but also it's a studio for us to work with someone to create their portraits. And so actually, you know what? I can record for you because I have the artist copy, so we could record your portraits if you want. So okay, it will record 10 seconds, and we don't know what's going to happen now because of the reception and Becky's computer. But now, okay, here we have biometrics, and you also have manual. So let's record one of James, and then that's when you come back, and then I'm going to have you go back to the camera. I'm going to have you switch from biometrics to manual. Oh, so biometrics responds to your movement. It actually reads a little bit of like your something supposedly in your skin, the way the camera interprets it, we call it heart rate. It's like not scientific, but it does give some authentic read. So when you're in biometrics, you can control these other toggles and kind of give it a different tone. I really love this pattern. I don't know what I call it, but and so it's also the idea of, I talked about authenticity of the tools, and the portrait series is this authenticity of the human being and of the experiences that we have in the age of AI, in the age of social media, and the flattening of our, people call it now like the taste and ideas. And so we really, really, really feel very strongly about recording the human experience right now through video. And that's when you record yourself. Unless you like it, record it. We also have a really beautiful growing collection of artists' portraits, which are, a lot of them are digital artists, and so we give them and they make amazing, incredible things with them. And so that's becoming now this other part of like the installation projects of it. Okay, now I'm going to do this, like, Matt, thank you so much. Okay, now I'm going to, do you wonder if I have a lot of my own selfies on my computer? Yeah, I do. It's so addictive. I'm going to give Becky a little present of these videos, and I'm going to save it on Becky's computer. Any questions while I do this? And James, right? So if you were an NFT collector, and at the time, this is no longer really available in that way, but you could basically create this portrait and what's called mint it on your wallet. And we have some collectors who have done it, create their portrait and then put it on the blockchain. So you could see that. What's your name? Jackson. How do you spell it? E-E-S-S-O. Okay, great. I'm gonna.
Are you ready for questions?
Are you ready for questions now?
Okay, folks.
I have two, I think only two other slides, but I will. Yes.
Can you talk about the video synthesizer?
I
Blocks
can.
Curated? Because I feel like that's important. Seems like the tool very.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about it, but also, like, honestly, yes, this is the synthesizer that we created in 2005. It was designed based on a lot of the work that was done by pioneers of the 60s and 70s, and we actually received not just funding, but schematics from the same people who invented these tools. I mentioned Experimental TV Center. You can look them up. They're still active. Usually in New York State, now they're in Colorado, I'm thinking. And those synthesizers are available there. There's other institutions, places I can go back to that slide, Signal Culture, where they still have these synthesizers. And so when we were making, so we built it, do you guys know a Moog? You guys have like a Moog synthesizer? It's kind of very similar to that. It's
So it's
basic,
modular.
it's modular, exactly. It's using voltage. It's a voltage. The video synthesizers have what is it called? Sync generator. So meaning that it's much easier to generate on an audio signal. If you basically take a cable and you touch it, you plug it into an amp, you will hear something. You will hear a pop. You will hear sound is easier. Video is very difficult. There's a lot of limitations on video. When we did the work in 2005, there was a lot of political intention around it. It was to subvert this, the confinement of the signal. It was to kind of liberate the analog systems. It has since then gone a lot harder because of limitations. So there was like a sync generator to allow a signal to be visible as video. We work with RGB, so usually that's kind of each signal. If you're making like a patch, you assign it one color. So there's a lot of resources online. Now, when we did it in 2005, we were really probably the first, if not from a small handful of artists of our generation that were really interested in that and developing it. So we got a lot of support from nonprofits and artists and all that. Now it's much more available. There's a lot of resources. I can tell you a lot of like how to build things. There's companies that make analog synthesizers. I can't remember what they're called now. Galaxy something, ZX something. But yeah, it's a little bit about that. It kind of works in a similar way to full-time audio modules. Anything else? Yes.
You talked about change and like evolution of technology, and I was just more curious about your journey and what you consider the biggest challenge that you've had to face, throughout your career. And,
Yeah. Well, this is a really good question, and I think maybe I'm going to switch to the next slide, which is about resources and support. So the thing is that we started our career within the not-for-profit. First, I guess, the music, switching between, every time we switched from one genre to another was always the most difficult. So we started off as performing, playing live shows and touring across the country and touring in Europe. And at some point, there were various reasons why, and it was extremely satisfying. I'm gonna let that extremely satisfying to get because there's a direct relationship with an audience. But it was very taxing on like being on the road. If anyone of you has been touring ever, it's a really difficult thing to do, to be a performer, to play live. And then so then we wanted to kind of switch it around, and so like first of all, so in that sense, it's like, so how do you, besides having your audience in the room, how do you then have your work live and be seen and experienced besides the moment that you're playing? So if you're a musician, you make records and things. If you are a
video and avant-garde video performer, what is that? So it took us a while. We're like, okay, we make DVDs and VHS. How do you get the work to like exist besides you being there in the time? And it's very, very difficult to convey a work that is complex to a broad audience. And then from there, we switched to working within the not-for-profit sector with like grants and fellowship and doing that. And that was difficult. And we, in fact, had to say no to a lot of gigs. We had to kind of consciously stop performing and say, we cannot do that anymore because we want to have access to this other thing, which is institutional support. So we did that for a long time. And then we're like, okay, we kind of reached the limitation of what we were able to do in that one. And we were like, okay, now we need to kind of transition to a galleries. And the truth is, no, very rarely will anyone open the door for you. And it's usually not, and definitely no one's going to open the door for you because they think you're talented. You have to do the thing that people want to come to. And it took me a long time to understand that. And so to transition from, so we had to first write the grants, make the performances, document them well, so they'll give us funding and give us invitations for exhibitions. And then we had to make the textile, make the videos, and make the works that then will, curators or a gallery or anyone who want to have your audience see it. So you can't just rely on people's good faith in your potential. You have to really show up for your work and get that done. And only based on what you've accomplished, you can kind of move on to the next stage.
Thank you.
So I did this little slide to show you some of the different things, and so I'm a big, we, LoVid, we're big believers in you are young people, you gotta nurture and develop your own community. So when we started, we would play in friends' basements and with friends in friends' apartments and kind of tour the country, and we would play anywhere they would have us. And those network of artists, especially when you're young, are the most important assets that you have, because you're building a strong relationship among your peers. You will develop together, and everybody will support each other. And someone might be a curator one day. Someone might be working in an institutional collection or be a collection manager for a bank. And so if you see the most interesting galleries, most interesting spaces in New York are really kind of born from artist communities. So I put the kind of is the kind of traditional galleries. We think about the galleries and the art fair, the artist fair spaces is kind of where I would say you want to look into. And Buffalo is, I think, historically a great place for that. Group and solo shows, sales and levels of sales. It took us a very long time to start selling work, even though in the beginning, our first show, we sold a couple of pieces, but that was it. And it's sort of like they say, the first thing you sell is you will only be selling the first thing you sold. And it takes a very long time to change people's opinion. So if someone saw us play live noise set 25 years ago, it doesn't matter everything we've done since then, they will still think of us as the noise music duo. So it's really important that you pay attention to what you put out in the world. And so it took us a long time to do sales, but that's cool. We've got a lot of residencies and grants, and then I was talking about the expertise. And so as you, the more experience you have, and actually the more varied experience you have, working in all these different kind of economies and situations, the more you know and the more you can share and be actually valuable to a lot of places. Yes.
This is a little different, but it was so great to see the older work large right in front, because I feel like, I guess you project these things over the years, but I always seeing things smaller. And there's such a viscerality to them. And my question is this connection. It's so interesting because we were using textiles in the beginning, and then we kind of just got more into transforming them into textiles. But is there something about the connectivity, the viscerality of the video where it's almost it's so immersive and it's so viscous, and there's this real haptic tactile quality
moment, I had a few moments in life that I came to me of where I sort of like understood myself as an artist. And one of those experiences was when I was very young, I was in film school, and I actually organized a kind of a marathon of video in my school, in the studio. And everybody gave us VHS tapes. People gave us VHS tapes, and I was putting them. And I remember the feeling of like fragility and power of just playing, putting a tape and switching between tape and tape in front of a live audience. So that moment of being like moving image, sound, and an audience, and kind of that playing with that on the moment, even in this like very micro decision-making moment of kind of DJing, was kind of a moment that really clicked for me. And that has been there throughout the whole time. And so performing abstract, immersive, big, loud, colorful, whatever word, textures, visceral work, and being at the moment, and it is a very, when you're performing live with musicians or performer, it's a kind of a vulnerability to it that's like terrifying and really, and very akin to what it's like to be in the studio. No matter what your practice is, if you're out there painting, you are in this moment, you're just alone. But imagine doing that where people are watching and in some cases participating. So that moment of really being, and in that moment, we feel like we are one with our instruments, we're one with each other, and we're also one with the people in the room. And so that moment of transcendence is really kind of core, and where I think like I as an artist always go back to. That's kind of my baseline, and from there it's translating and bringing people in closer, bringing myself closer, bringing the work closer to that particular moment that can only exist in certain, like very rare instances in life.
So you had the hugging videos where you kind of see like the patterns or the snapshots on the people. Have you ever considered turning your the snapshots into clothes or textiles or anything like that?
Yes, so I've done a lot of that actually. So part of the project is, well, the project is the essence of the work. It is that it's this relationship with the body, and that relationship can be on your actual physical skin. It can be projected, it can be simulated, and so we've done a lot of wearables. We've done, it's not the hugging pieces. We've done textile designs that kind of come as like a small little tradition run of like a scarf. We've done like a hoodie. I'm really interested, and we've done a lot of clothing for our performances, but we've done a few wearables that people can wear, because it is a kind of like a passion to kind of cover the world with this, with these patterns, to kind of bring it, and the video where we showed you at the beginning, it was the idea that the video spills out of the screen and kind of becomes part of the body and the textile. There is that desire, and actually, I don't know if you guys know the painters in the room, and did we talk about last time about the P&D movement, what is it, pattern and decoration movement, for if they're painters here or people who are interested in the craft. So it was a movement that was essentially a feminist movement in the painting in the 70s, I want to say, of artists that again kind of reclaimed the traditions of craft and the patterns, and made paintings that were before then considered lesser, because they were not dealing with abstract expressionism or minimalism, and it was a really revolutionary moment where they were like placing these works in pattern and in craft in the center, kind of changed the point of view of where art history is. It's a really, really important moments in history. And there's a great catalog about it where it uses the word patterns are promiscuous, promiscuity of patterns. And what that means is that patterns, because I mentioned the word infinity, that's kind of an important word for us. And the idea that a pattern can really expand into any surface. It sort of can it can be on a canvas, but it can also kind of spill over to the couch, and you can kind of cover all the surfaces of it. And that's a different kind of immersion that I'm really interested in. Yeah. Yes.
Part of Long Island.
We live in Suffolk County.
last call for questions for Tali. All right, thank you so much.